This is Housebound. I'm Chris,
I'm Holly.
I'm Ashlyn.
I'm Greg.
and you're invited.
Welcome to Housebound, a podcast we made because we needed company. In it, we talk about things that are on our minds, and today we are talking about verbosity.
Means you talk a lot.
Means you talk a lot. It's not about using lots of verbs or anything like that. I mean, it could be if you're using them for a really, really long time.
You
But-
just imagine stringing together verbs.
yeah.
It's not about stringing or using or running or applying.
Well done.
Good job,
or
Chris.
recording verbs.
Yeah.
Boy.
So, verbosity. What do you guys think of when you hear those words?
Some people's Oscar award receiving speeches. Verbosity.
That's fair. There's some of them are supposed to be shorter, or yeah.
Yeah.
And the
I
music
think
cues
that would-
in.
That might fit in better. That would have been a good thing for our episode about brevity on things that should be short.
Be brief.
But aren't.
But aren't.
Oscars are like, this is going to take an hour 15. And then the one
it's,
dude who just
11:30,
received best person on the side while the credits were rolling and was in the room was like, I'd like to thank my...
And the best part about that is
I was born on...
the music starts to play, so you're like, yes, and I'd like to thank my mom and my dad and they've muted his mic 5 minutes ago.
They just keep talking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So good.
But I don't know if that's I don't know if award recipient speeches are necessary to be long. I don't know if that's a requirement. I think it's just a thing that happens, is that you have
every
a platform
year, and they still don't
Yep.
anticipate it happening.
Well, I think they kind of do, but you're right, it always goes longer, but you've got so many people to get through, so
Mhm.
maybe the awards ceremony itself would be the thing that I think of when I think of long, and not because of each individual speech, but they just end up
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
what makes it long,
Yep.
as well as the amount of awards they have to give out and everything.
And the
but
pre-show. There's a bunch of stuff in the pre-show, and
Mhm,
it's just if you're in it for the whole event,
it's like a 4 or 5 hour event.
it's an event.
Do you know what's silly?
What's silly?
Is that there are governmental decrees about verbosity. Like, you can filibuster
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and you just talk. Just talk. As long as you're talking, you don't have to
Yeah.
vote on this bill.
You can't sit down or eat something.
so you can
Yeah.
stalemate a bill.
Yeah.
Or stall.
Just
stall
talk
a
longer.
bill. Yeah.
Just-
Doesn't
do
happen
it.
in an episode of Parks and Rec.
It
Yeah.
did.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's how I know what it is.
Yeah.
Ah, there
I
you go.
know what it is
Cool.
because of an episode of, I think, Scandal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
Chris knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I know what both of them are talking about.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's crazy that verbosity itself is written into law.
hmm
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because it's a passive way to protest something?
I don't really understand why
Or
it's there
it's
at
an
all. I also
acceptable-
don't know if it's a Canadian thing at all. I just know that it's in the U.S. politics.
That's
That's a
fair.
great thought. I have no idea whether or not it exists in Canada. It sounds very Googleable, but
Yeah. What? There's a computer at my fingertips.
When you have people that are writing dissertations or theses,
Theses?
theses.
No, not that one.
Multiple
Did you just get it, Ashley?
thesis.
Yeah, I was really delayed.
But when people have to write these huge papers, I mean, it's required that you've done some work on these. So that's another example I can think of when.
So do you feel like effort goes into being verbose?
Sorry, is this related to? Is it directly related to speaking, or just
no?
just
It's just length in general.
yeah?
Oh, okay.
Well, I would say generally, I would assume that yes, effort would go into something. That's not to say that effort can't go into something that is brief, but if it's verbose, chances are that effort has gone into it. I don't know if you could do a poor job of something and have it last for a long time, unless you're talking about Vampire Diaries or something. Like,
yeah, I was thinking of like long-winded book series.
Yeah.
They can say nothing for very many pages.
Yes. I don't
guess.
think that quality follows brevity or verbosity very closely.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about, like, if you know something really well, you should be able to explain it fairly concisely and have it make sense. On the other hand, if you know something really well, it might be very difficult to explain it without being verbose because it's just a complicated thing that you know a lot about.
That's the tricky thing about that interview question. That's always like, explain something that you know a lot about in exactly 3 minutes. And they like start the timer and you need to be done by
Who does that?
job interview for your workplace.
Really? They did
Yeah.
that to you? Oh,
Not
that's
that we
awful.
should name names at this point.
I don't
then,
think
but
they did that to me.
I don't know if I would have
followed the rules.
I mean, they would
cleverly
have
had a
started the
very good
timer,
answer
right?
for it,
Oh, well, that's
so
good.
it worked out in my favor. But
Yeah.
not the job. But
Yeah.
So, but then that's like a false. You're given the illusion of being able to explain something and be impressive about it, but then you have a time constraint. So now you're not focused on the details or the accuracy of what
The content.
of your content. Yeah, you're now more worried about running out of time.
That might be the point of the question.
Yeah.
More so.
it's just thinking
do
on your
you get
feet.
panicked when
Yeah.
when you're under
Yeah.
pressure?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing is verbosity, is it better in some ways? Because when we look at how books and stuff are written today, we kind of like champion sort of like, descriptions or things, or just like putting you kind of into the scene,
Immersing you.
immersing you.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes time. And yeah, there's like books that are really long and that, like, whether it's series like, I don't know, like Game of Thrones or Brandon Sanderson's long Way of Kings series, or, like even the Harry Potter series, they're not too bad, but like some of them are like pretty chunky books, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in particular. And so like
It's a lot of feelings.
yeah, there's a
that
lot
book.
of feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, being descriptive takes space.
Mm-hmm.
But then looking back at like how ancient writings like used to be, like what's interesting is that whenever they add detail to a story, like descriptors of characters, that's actually like an important part of the story. Like they only mention that
Things that are important.
Like, for example, what would be something? Okay, like for example, in the Bible, Saul is described as being tall. So King Saul. And so that's like really one of his only descriptors is like, he's a really tall guy. And then you come to the story of David and Goliath, that big challenging battle that we all kind of know about, the underdog takes on the overdog. But what's hilarious is that Goliath is described as being super tall and massive, and the king was supposed to go and lead the charge in front of his army. And so the one person who should be challenging the tall guy is King Saul, and he ends up actually being the one who kind of cowers in fear. And so then that's where David, the little guy, the runt kid who is supposed to be tending the sheep and then visiting, he's the one who then steps into that spot. And so that descriptor of Saul being tall isn't meant to be like, like he was like that tall, handsome, and dark. It's not about that. Like it's actually a story point and then that's because back then when you're writing stuff, you had to be brief in some ways because every word you put down, like it costs a lot more.
Yeah.
And so whereas today you can type anything into your computer, it's all digital. It's not even like typewriter.
Keep it forever.
Yeah. You're not doing any ink or anything like that. And so, and you can be as long-winded as you want. And so I guess the question that I found is really interesting as I'm studying and reading like ancient texts and things like that is like, is what we have better in terms of like long-winded and verbose? And is that actually like a better story, or is there actually some interesting nuance to keeping things brief, and it's actually in only writing down the important details that actually you can pull some really interesting stuff from stories?
I mean, it's got to be a balance somewhere in
It's gotta
between,
be a
right?
balance.
And what's the purpose of your writing, right?
Mhm.
If
That's true.
you're writing a recreational book that doesn't need to have all that much meaning, just lets people get lost in it,
Yeah.
then it's okay to be verbose and have these big long descriptions, maybe, if
Yeah.
it keeps their attention anyway. But if you're writing something that has a point that you want to get across to people, then you don't want to be super verbose. You want
Mhm.
to be obvious and clear so that they remember the parts that you want them to remember,
Right.
and that there's no extra junk in there.
That's the interesting thing about crime novels, is that they're all actually about putting like the important things in the story, but then like, and I'm not talking about true
Sneaky
crime, but
ways.
like, sneaky ways, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I should have seen that, you
Riding
know,
the
and, like,
coin.
but it's because they've actually overstuffed the novel with a bunch of
Mhm.
details.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
show, where we recently watched Murderville, which is a new show on Netflix with Will Arnett, and it's like supposed to be this improv show where he essentially like the script's written, he knows what it is, but his guest co-host, so that includes who are some of the people who've been on there in terms of their names. Do you remember?
Sharon Stone, Camille Nanjiani,
Yep.
Conan O'Brien.
Conan O'Brien.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't know anything about the script.
Mhm.
And so they're just supposed to be able to kind of like take things, and then they're the ones who end up having to solve who ended up doing it. And so
Mhm.
as they're acting in these things, and then they'll always show back in terms of like which details you as the watcher also should have kind of picked up.
Mhm.
And so it's because they like fill it with and overstuff it with a bunch of other things like red herrings that like it seems to be this person, but really it's not. So that's a good modern day example that anyone that's just recently come out on Netflix, so feel free, watch it. We don't
Plug.
necessarily endorse it necessarily, but it was a good watch.
Interesting.
So not for everyone.
Yeah, we don't
but-
have a promo code for it or anything like that.
No, yeah. Go to netflix.com/housebound.
And you'll get a virus.
You'll get a 404 page. When you were saying that about older texts, I was thinking of old, albeit translated, stories that are in these forms of
Like the epics.
poetry, and how you like they're long, they're like big stories, and
Right.
they're like hard for us to understand because we've migrated so far away from
Mhm.
the way that that's worded, and also sometimes they're not even in English originally, but they have meaning when you sit and consider them, and so that they can be brief, but they can also be verbose in their meaning,
Mhm.
in their reading between the lines, and so like that's an interesting feature of those, I guess, and the reason Beowulf stuck out to me was because they go to length to describe the hero, but they have to describe the hero in terms of his youth and like the battles he's already fought and these things that you wouldn't know, and so then they have to give you that information.
Mhm.
Otherwise it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't connect with you. So that's interesting. There's times when it's just required, otherwise you create no bond with it, you know. So.
Right. Yeah. It's those. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about some of those long epic poetry. Yeah. Things like Homer's Odyssey, and it was another one that's like really long, but it's like it's kind of that interesting sort of dynamic of being both like brief in the fact that it's poetry, but also really long in the fact that it takes us a long time to get from the beginning to the end. And I know that they recently, it came out I think last fall, but some guy did like Star Wars or something as like written kind of like Homer's Odyssey in the same sort of like
Goodness.
as just like a long like epic poem, and it's
Okay.
just like it's the same thing with the whole Verily A New Hope Shakespeare Star Wars thing that I'm like I want to get this, but anyways, sorry, we digress.
Yeah.
We digress. You know what? We probably should wrap this up. I think that this is
We wouldn't want to go on too long about going on too long.
No, not at all. So I think this is a good spot to stop. You all have your day to get back to, whatever it is. I know you probably just took a moment of paused your day and just sat and listened to us for the last 15
Just
or so
completely
minutes.
unhindered.
Yeah, unhindered. Yeah,
No distractions.
you close the door, turn off the lights, and just
in complete silence.
yeah,
Let me just soak
Meditate
it all
on
in.
our
yeah.
words.
Immerse yourself in what is, and imagine yourself in Chris and Holly's basement.
Let me read you the posters.
Yeah.
Fast 5. Summer begins April 29. In theaters and IMAX.
Sounds like I'm really there.
Yeah, you can even go further than that and go, imagine yourself sitting down on a chair that has a little bit of give in the middle. You could also lean back, but don't do that because of the microphone. And
Imagine yourself sitting in our basement, us ignoring you because we're recording a podcast.
Yeah.
That's Odin's life right now.
Yeah.
Poor Odin.
But yeah, thanks for listening to us. We appreciate it. Ashlyn, where can they find us?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Anchor, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Wow.
Feel free to send us a message on any of our social media channels, and on anchor.fm, if you make an account and download the app, you can send us a 1-minute voice clip that we could include in the podcast. How
no
fun!
way. That's crazy.
It's limited to 1 minute so that you can't ramble, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. Keep it brief.
Not like we
not
know
verbose.
anything about that.
Yeah. No, that's good.
That doesn't seem very fair. We get an unlimited time to speak, and they get 1 minute.
I know.
It's a classist society.
You know what's
But we love you,
unlimited?
Anchor. Thank you for
Thank you for supporting new creators. Yeah, you know what doesn't have restrictions is the text count in an email. So send as long of an email as you want complaining about that.
We'll read out your email.
Maybe some of it.
Oh no, don't send it to us. Send it to
Oh.
Anchor. We can't do anything about that.
Oh, okay. That's true. Sorry, I thought you were talking. This is where active listening wasn't really happening. I thought that you were talking about them sending us an email. But please do send us an email. If it is really long, we will read it if you want us
That's
to.
a big commitment up front.
No, we'll read it. We won't read it on air.
Oh,
We're making.
Oh, no, I will read the whole
We're
thing.
subverting the promises here. We're
I
like,
do
somebody will
want to
read it someday.
online, or on air.
It
we
will
might
be
read
seen.
parts of it. You don't know what the content of a very long email is going
It's-
to be, Greg.
It's true, but like,
so it's just gonna be copy and
It could be-
paste a novel.
No,
yeah, it
it's
could be a
the
short
entire-
story.
The
could be
entire
very
script
The
of
Great Gatsby is in public domain.
They're gonna
now.
take a Harlequin
Oh, man.
romance novel, copy and paste it, and make Greg read it on air.
Nah. Okay.
Please, I
will-
don't want to get any emails that have the.
I'm with
the
Holly on this one.
the text of the B movie.
Yeah. Please just like cut into this episode you just like quietly reciting the first 20 lines of the B movie.
I'll do it right after the credits.
Yeah. In short and in length, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer.
Till the end of this episode.
Dave
do we
Ramsey
part?
might come get you.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Good morning and good night.
R.I.P. this podcast.
We just have to go out in a long-winded way, it has to make sense.
Okay, now you stop playing.
No, you stop.
No, listeners, you stop playing.
Oh. I thought you were talking to me.
Okay, you hang up
He's
first.
talking to the captive audience.
They're only captive because we haven't let them go yet. They can see on their podcast that there's still time trickling away on this episode, and it's not yet done.
Oh boy.
There is no end credits scene at the end of this
Poor
episode,
souls.
so
No.
no.
You'll hear music right about now, and then it'll slowly fade up louder and louder, and
Our voices,
and
Fade up.
and take.
our
and
voices
it'll-
will get quieter and quieter.
Yeah. We'll just keep talking like this until it completely fades us
Yeah.
out, and then it eclipses our voices. According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway, because bees don't care what humans think is impossible. Yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black. Ooh, black and yellow. Let's shake it up a little bit.
Barry, breakfast ready.
Coming. Hang on a second. Hello?
Barry,
Adam?
can you believe this is happening?
I can't. I'll pick you up. Looking sharp. Use the stairs. Your father paid good money for those. Sorry, I'm excited. Here's the graduate. We're very proud of you, son. A perfect report card, all B's. Very proud.